click.
There we go.
Okay, I
Thank
see it.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. So then
There we
you
go.
asked how did you feel about this episode? Let me hear from you guys.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'll go first. I feel like the discussion was focusing more on like hot button, not even hot button topics, more like things that would definitely get more attention, like the Andrew Tate
Yep.
question.
Yep.
Do men face more? I feel like we didn't get to the actual root of the issue. I felt like it was more like, but this is Jubilee. I expected them to like sensationalize it, so I
Yeah.
wasn't surprised. But that's how I felt personally.
Yeah, I think that as soon as we sort of saw that Pearl was going to be involved in this conversation, I took it as less of a good faith discussion and more as an opportunity to, sort of push back on the rhetoric that she's usually involved with.
Yeah,
And yeah, like you mentioned, also some of the issues were a bit more, I guess, um, pop culture referencing rather than substance civ, such as Andrew Tate and yeah.
Yeah, no, funny enough, I don't know who Pearl was this whole conversation. And I think I remember
Oh,
I made that clear because I kept pointing out how there's a lot of bad faith actors on the men's rights side and a lot of grifters. And I was like, I was pretty much standing next to one of them, right? You know what I mean? I
yeah,
was like, oh, this is crazy. It was funny too, because like when I like signed up for this and I chose to be on the men's rights side, I even asked them actually, I was like, hey, you're not gonna have like someone with like a lot of followers on this side, are you? Because at this point, because I know the way social media runs, and it's just like you're gonna want to have whoever has the biggest follower. I don't know
yeah,
about you guys, but I felt like they were giving a lot of time to Pearl, and
yeah,
I felt like it was kind of weird because I didn't think you guys like the reason why I wanted to have this Zoom meeting was I felt like you guys didn't really get to say much at all. And instead of arguing over the meat and potatoes of things, it was over more so like semantics. And you guys didn't really get to say it. I felt bad for that other woman. What was her name? Carol? You know what I'm
the one
talking
on
about?
the older
Yeah.
woman. Yeah,
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 I felt
yeah.
yeah. She should have said a
Also,
lot more.
it's funny you mentioned Pearl being popular. Like she has millions of subscribers. We all knew who Pearl was when she showed up in her car. I was actually kind of in shock. I was like, oh, so we're really doing this. But Jasmine, I didn't know, but she's apparently really popular too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
she has followers.
that was very interesting.
Yeah, she's had experience, I noticed after like debating with sort of the
Manosphere.
yeah, Fresh and Fit
Yeah,
podcast, her
I saw
podcast
some of her
quite a
clips.
bit. And I was like, yeah, she's pretty smart. And then Anitza was the other
Okay.
Nisa,
yeah,
that was her.
yeah, she did really well too. But it was interesting because I felt as though on the feminist side there was sort of a cohesive I guess place in terms of where we're coming from. Whereas on the
Mm,
men's rights activist side, you had yourself, and then you also had one guy who was more
yeah,
traditional masculine. You had Pearl, who was like the grifter type, and then you had
yeah.
I forgot what the other guy's name was. I think that
Thought of
he
me there.
was in good faith, but did have
Yeah.
disagreements with.
No, that was the thing. Like, because my whole thing was I agreed with pretty much everything you guys were saying.
Yeah.
And I think they even asked me at the end, why are you on this side? And the reason why was because, like, in my head, ideally, MRAs and feminists are like working in tandem to get rid of
Yeah.
the patriarchy. And I feel like, to be honest with you, it was kind of frustrating because it's this idea that like I guess maybe I'm too I get it maybe because I'm dealing in ideals here, um, but to me it just felt like like I feel like MRAs need to like pick up the slack and look at the blind spots that feminists have. And I
Yeah.
think that's like where we can kind of go from there. Because the reason why I wanted the Zoom chat, aside from like vocalizing feelings, but I feel like the conversation should have been around how the patriarchy hurts men,
Right.
because that's ultimately what I don't see a lot like discussing in society. It's mostly a lot of just blaming women, which I think I said it like multiple times. I don't support blaming women for most problems, especially like
Right.
right now when you have like stuff like like abortion rights and half of Congress trying to control women's bodies. Like that's not something that why tack on more blame to women for stuff like that? The
Yeah.
conversation should be more about men and how the patriarchy hurts them. So like I kind of was hoping we could kind of go around. Tell me like your guys' perspective. How does the patriarchy like hurt men, and do you have any like personal experiences with that?
Well, I would say that I think the patriarchy it was built by men to like serve men. It was supposed to be a system that at the time people thought worked. Um, and I feel like as time went on, men started to become pressured to be this, you know, to fill in this role that the patriarchy basically says that you should be provider, protector and stuff like that. And once that did not go the way they planned, they started looking for someone to blame.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want to blame themselves. So the next target, women.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel like a lot of the grievances that, even the Men's Lives Matter guy, I don't know his name, that was
Nico,
on,
I think was his name.
yeah, Nico.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about like, you know, there's this pressure on men to be providers. And I'm like, you're
Yeah.
almost getting it, man. You're almost
Exact.
getting
Yes.
it.
Yes.
But he never really like got the point. He still thought that this is how it should be.
Yeah. His
And
his
it's
his
not,
thinking
yeah,
was way too rigid. But the grievances he like how can I phrase it? He was emotionally honest but intellectually dishonest.
yes. I think he was lying. I think he was gaslighting himself into believing that despite the pain that he admitted that the patriarchy puts on men, like he was
Yes.
saying that, oh, men have to do all this and stuff. He
Exactly.
still felt like that's the way things should be. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. It
Yeah,
doesn't
no,
have to be that
exactly.
way.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a thing that I see a lot with I feel like dudes that we don't talk about is the grievances we have are valid, but I feel like because we have so many grifters and loudmouths, they will acknowledge the problems, but they will offer really messed up solutions. It's kind of like again, I think I used this metaphor in the episode, but it's like when you have poor people blaming other poor people for like
Yeah.
lack of unions or lack of wages. Somebody rich is telling you to look at your fellow man and hey, this is the reason why you're like instead of looking up, you know what I mean?
Right. Yes. Precisely.
Yeah, I think the like identity anxiety that a lot of men face is due to the fact that like for, so long we've had this very simple role of, as long as you get a job and are able to
Mm-hmm.
provide an income, you have purpose in life and then getting a woman will therefore follow because they don't have,
Yep.
they're incapable of working and having autonomy. And
Yep.
now that um, we've rightly, tried attempted to create a society in which women do have more autonomy. Men are beginning to have this sort of identity crisis, and instead of embracing, facets of femininity that would actually help men, such as being, emotionally vulnerable, such as being, a better caretaker of the home or doing things, related to
Mm-hmm.
just like our general well-being.
Yeah.
A lot of men are having this like reactive uh,
Yep.
thing where they want to revert back to traditional masculinity and think that that will provide their purpose, but we're never going back,
Yeah.
So,
100%.
yeah.
We can't go back. Like I feel like there's this notion I feel with like young men and like I understand the idea of feeling left behind. I think that's a
Yeah.
thing that I think like should be more of a conversation. When you talk about how the future is female, I'm cool with that. I want to make that clear. But then you also have to look at like the statistics of men just falling behind in school. I think
Yeah.
that is again, that's not women's fault. That's not anybody's fault, but that does need to be addressed. Like, what are we doing
Yeah.
to help young men in education? Because after a certain, again, I don't see gender. I want to take down the patriarchy, but when I see like children, that's what I'm also like looking at. I'm like, okay, children are like young boys are falling behind. Why is that? What can we do to support them? Because what I'm kind of like seeing again is like you have women that are 100%. Now they're starting to get more autonomy and like they're trying to like pretty much just you see women CEOs. We're gonna have a woman president come November. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
all wonderful stuff. And then you have men who feel sort of left behind by society, and that's how I think they get radicalized. Because instead of, I do think I have this thing where the reason why I hate the patriarchy and by extension I feel like America is just because I think society as a whole just doesn't care about anybody. You know what
Yeah.
I
I
mean?
was about to say that
Yeah, talk about
tying
it.
back to the American thing, I feel like I can compare the grievances that men are saying and like blaming women on this whole American dream thing, right? Like
Hmm.
you come to the motherland, you're promised that if you work hard, you'll get where you need to be in life. You'll end up wealthy, you'll live a satisfying life. And then when that doesn't pan out, people start looking for someone to blame. They blame
Yep.
immigrants for
Yep.
taking the
Yep.
jobs. They blame,
Yeah.
uh, the left for making
Yeah.
everything woke and
Yep.
leaving out the white guy. It feels
Yep.
like whenever there's a problem, people always look for someone to blame rather than looking.
Exactly.
And there are, like you said, like issues men face, like education specifically. I feel like the way the education system is set up, it's for like women are more. It's more conducive to like a woman, like a girl. It's been proven that they learn at faster rates than men.
Uh,
So the education system that we're working with, it does need to be like, I don't know, fixed a little bit so that everybody has equal
yeah.
opportunity to like, academically
Yeah.
succeed. But at the same time, how is women doing more a bad thing? That's what I
No,
never understood.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's the thing. Like, I don't understand. Like, because again, this is why I hate masculinity because it is fragile enough that somebody else doing better than you is a personal. It's like you know that one Michael Jordan meme, and I took that personally. That's
yeah, I took that
literally what
person.
masculinity does to you. It makes it so that everybody else's success is a slight against you, and that just again slowly, or maybe not even slowly, but that'll eventually start radicalizing. I feel like young men because again, like life is hard. Like, I mean,
Right.
rent's expensive. Like the traditional views of masculinity are very hard to achieve. Making enough money to support like a household, like just off of one income, that's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure. And I would hate to be a man in that situation. And I feel like there's a lot of men who also would hate to be the man in that situation. But the ideas of them actually changing and actually like getting rid of that mentality, it's
Right.
hard because for some, I think I said it in the Jubilee video, but for some people, their masculinity is literally all that they have.
Yeah. Speaking of radicalization, Evan, I think during the video he talked about how he like fell down the alt right pipeline of like hating feminism. I had a similar experience. I want him to like, can you go more into detail about that? Like, just get your
Yeah,
perspective.
I
Yeah.
actually, so I never was right wing, I would say, and that probably prevented me from going further down. But because especially a lot of the figures that I used to listen to ended up becoming like super far right. I don't know if
Right.
you're familiar with like Sargon of Akkad or
Yeah.
No.
some of those early feminine, like anti-feminist, anti-social justice warrior
Milo.
Yeah.
videos on the internet
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, Marley, yeah.
yeah, somewhat related to the, I guess, like new atheism space. So I listened to a lot of like Sam
Yeah.
Harris, even to some extent like Dave Rubin and all that. And I was very young, but I think that because of the fact that I never identified as right wing, and I knew I disagreed with them on a lot of other issues, it made me reconsider. Well, why is it that I agree with them about feminism, but I don't agree with it. Maybe there's something that I'm missing when it comes to feminism. And so I think that once I, gave the interpretations of feminism like a fair shake and steel man
Mhm.
the position, it made sense to me. It's like patriarchy isn't this, patriarchy is often thought of as like this amorphous, like almost like conspiratorial thing by these right wingers, but
Yeah.
patriarchy
Yeah.
just a mere acknowledgement that like we live in a system where men hold predominant
Yep.
economic, political, and social power, which is just like a descriptive reality, you know?
Yeah.
You,
I
you know,
feel like oh, do you want to go, Ariel?
you can go. You can go.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I had a similar experience where I think it was around 2014 or 2015, basically like
Yeah.
during the Trump, like when he was announcing he was going to run for president. And I remember I was getting into these type of videos, which basically framed feminism as like women complaining, like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
you don't have rights, boo hoo, womp womp type shit. And I remember I was not right wing, just like you. I knew that Republicans wanted to take away people's rights. I noticed that I had a more left leaning worldview, but at the same time, I didn't know that these people were right wing. I had
Yeah.
just assumed that they were just, people calling out women crying about things that didn't matter. It wasn't
Yeah.
until I started seeing like this intersectionality of them being Republicans, anti-feminist Trump supporters that I started
Yeah.
to see like, oh fuck, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Um, and I looked into it more, and I started to get the realization that feminism is something that needs to be talked about. And male rights activists, they might not know it, but they're feminists in a way, because if they're trying to
Yeah.
pull down the patriarchy, that makes them feminists in my view.
We got the same end goal, but maybe just different solutions to it.
Yeah,
Like, and I say I don't identify as like hardcore with the men. I identify as feminist and also men's rights activists, because again, in my worldview, they're the same. Like, gender doesn't
yeah,
exist, so it's the
yeah.
same.
I agree.
I actually really love this conversation topic because I consider myself like a recovering edgelord. Because
Yeah,
like,
I think
you
we
know,
all are, to be honest.
okay, see, like that's the
Very
thing. Like, okay, because like I feel like I genuinely feel like what is it? It is okay. I came from a background of like I would make fun of Tumblr people. I would make fun of social justice warriors. Like every because my whole thing is just like to me, it's like, dude, why are you guys complaining about everything, every little thing you guys complaining about? Like I had this joke because my brother introduced me to Tumblr, and I was like, bro, this just feels like a fallen utopia. Like it feels like it was a good idea and it
Yeah,
just failed. Like you guys suck. The thing that I guess like stopped me from going down those really deep like pipelines, because I want to make it clear like I do think like I was susceptible to all that stuff when I was younger. Like I would listen to Jordan Peterson a lot, and I
yeah,
thought
me too.
Jordan Peterson had really good things. Like he filled in the role, I think, for a lot of men with absentee fathers. Not saying my dad was absentee or anything. I love my father, but like he
A
was
father
for
figure.
someone. Yeah, he was like a father figure, someone telling men, "Hey, clean up your room."
Yeah,
Like the thing, because again, this is the thing that I've just noticed with every single men's rights thing is they are really good at pointing out the problems, but the solutions they offer are messed up. Like with someone like
yeah,
Jordan Peterson, he would tell you like, "Hey, for men, I'm really sorry that you have this burden to carry. I'm sorry that you feel alone, and I'm sorry that you feel like you have to work hard in order to be loved. And you know what? You do. You do got to work hard to be loved, because that's just the world needs strong men, and it's people like you. Are you gonna hold us back?" And I'm like, "Whoa!"
right.
Like my whole thing is like my whole thing is just like basically it's not hard to fall into I think that pipeline
Yeah,
because there is so many grifters and loudmouths on this side who are very good at identifying the problem, but then when they start trying to sell you a course, when they start telling you to blame other people, like the only thing that kept me in check, and I'm being fully honest here, is I have this mentality where if you're my friend, I will care about your issues. I did not have a lot of friends when I was at my worst.
yeah,
However, I've always had like one good like a woman friend. Like one of my best friends is a girl, and I've known her since middle school. She's like I've
that's
known her
always
forever,
iconic.
and,
Yeah,
and she like I'm very susceptible to like, hey, if this is fucked up, can you please call me out? And she did. Like she would always call me out. She would always be like, hey, like I feel that I understand the pain. I get where you're coming from. You know what I mean? You feel isolated and alone, but I don't think like you should blame women for that stuff, because there was a point in my time when I was again I'm in my like this is like early 20s, like late teens, it's like maybe like 19, 20, somewhere around then, like
yeah,
I remember like there were like a period where I was like, man, like how come girls just have it easier, when in actuality I just didn't feel cared for by society, and I felt like nobody cared about what I had to say, and
yeah,
that took a while to get out of. The only thing that helped me is not therapy, but just finding a community of other people, like just talking, like just making friends, really. You know what I mean?
right. No,
yeah.
Yeah.
this is the conversation I wish we. I hate the shit on Jubilee again, but I feel
I'll
like
do it, dude.
they,
I want to sit on this so badly.
yeah, like I had a feeling that, so Jubilee, my experience with Jubilee is, um, I've been watching them for years, and there
Same.
was a time where I do feel like they did have productive conversations,
Oh, for
but
sure.
I think as time went on, they started to get more into the like um rage bait type shit. Like
100%.
they literally dropped a
Providing more
video, I think like a month
influencers
ago.
and yeah.
Yeah, like Democrats versus Republicans, and it was the craziest, unmoderated. Just
Oh yeah.
it was a shit show. I'm like, what
Yeah.
happened to these guys?
Yeah. No, it's the same thing too with like trans people and like turfs. And I'm like, I don't care about what turfs have to say. Give trans folks their rights. Like, why is this even
Yeah,
this isn't a middle? It stopped being a middle ground. And it's like, hey man, like it's kind of messed up because I would say they fell under the Joe Rogan umbrella where you give everyone a chance and by default you start platforming extremists. And
yes.
I don't know if they're cautious of it. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt.
They
But
had the
like
fresh and fit guy on. That should tell you
no,
everything.
No, it's
Yeah.
funny, and I literally even called them out on the when I did the interview for the Jubilee video. I even said, "Hey, you're not gonna have like an extremist on here," and they're like, "No, no, no, it'll be normal people." And I'm like, "All right, yeah."
Turn off
It was kind of frustrating. Yeah,
Um, yeah, what you were referring to with the whole alienation thing, I think that's also an important thing to consider. I think that a lot of men's rights activists and even to some degree feminists don't acknowledge to the extent to which like capitalism and like
yep,
economic anxiety
yep,
is actually like stems a lot of the problems with like lack of community that people
yep,
feel, and that creates lack of purpose.
yep.
Like there were I was arguing with kind of like someone on TikTok at one point who was saying, it's not these women are not happy working like 9 to 5 corporate desk jobs. Like that's not their place in society. It's like that shouldn't be men's place in society either. 9 to 5 corporate
Yeah,
desk jobs aren't fulfilling for anyone.
exactly.
That's something like that. That's not a natural male role either. That is any providing a profit for somebody else is going to be ultimately alienating and lacking a ton of fulfillment. Like even prior to this whole feminist thing of women gaining autonomy in the economy, when it was a man providing for a single income, there's a reason why there's a ton of like shows and media pieces about men coming home from work after a long day and still
Yep.
hating their lives, even
Oh
when
yeah.
they have a
Yes.
wife, and even when they do have the picture perfect household or
Yep.
whatever. It's just that they're not happy going to fucking
Yep.
work every
Yep.
day.
And they take their anger on women. Like it's one of those things where you look at any media, I would say from like 1990s and past, and the joke is domestic abuse. And it's
Yeah.
so wild how commonplace that is. And it's like, bruh, you're taking your anger out on your spouse because you feel so powerless, so devalued by society that like it's the same thing of like, how bullies don't pick on anyone their own size. They're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, let me go and pick on like, let me go and pick on my wife. Let me go and
Yeah.
attack women because they're the only people I can take my anger, or even children. Like screw it, you know what I mean?
I
Some
think it's about
Yeah,
control.
100%.
Um, I feel like and I'm not generalizing here, but I feel like a lot of men's right activists, especially the extremist ones, I think while the grievances are logical and do make sense, I feel like they're not coming at it from a place of like, let's solve these issues, let's get this shit together.
Yeah,
They're coming at it from a point of view where they're like, I can't control my life anymore, and I feel like it's
yeah,
women's fault.
yep.
And they get they have to bear the burden of that, and it's tragic.
Here's the thing though. It's like, how do I phrase this? I do think that there is some validity to well, let me phrase that. I Most isms that I've noticed are out of jealousy that people care about their problems. Like when I hear all lives matter, I hear a group of people who say my feelings don't matter. I don't matter. So when
Yeah,
I see black folks saying that their lives matter and it's trending on social media, what does that say about me? When I hear men complain about women and being like, "Oh, how come they get to complain about stuff?" I hear jealousy. I hear frustration because again, for a lot of society, nobody feels like they matter to the
yeah,
point that like that's why a lot of folks think trans people are powerful. That's why a lot of folks don't like trans people. Like obviously you have your transphobes, obviously you have your racists, you have like people in this group, but I do think there needs to be a conversation around folks who are honestly jealous and feel that this group of people is more cared for than I am. And to an extent, I would say they're right because at least those groups tend to have community around them.
all right,
There tends to be more of a like social grace given to those. Like if a trans person complains about struggles, I would argue most people on the internet would be like, "Hey, this is 100% a valid struggle." But whereas when men voice their grievances, I do think there is a sort of like like
dismissive.
people don't like to say man up, but I feel like we still say it in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
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 the struggle for liberation also gives you purpose. So like
Oh yeah.
the way that women, are, fighting for feminism, it that's sort of the tough thing I think a lot of people are unable to wrap their head around is like, well, how can men have identity anxiety when they've been in the predominant power role? But that's exactly why they're having an identity anxiety. That's exactly why like
Yeah.
all of these different groups who haven't been, traditionally oppressed are having identity anxiety because they don't have the purpose of struggle in the same way that marginalized groups do.
Yeah, it's basically, I feel like I'm not even gonna say the term like cry for attention. It's a cry for help in a way, because I think a lot of people, they get caught up in this mindset that whenever somebody else talks about their problems, that they're dismissing their own problems.
Yeah,
And sometimes I feel like it's weaponized maliciously. I do feel like there are
100%.
people that subconsciously feel like whenever someone talks about their problems, like, oh, what about me? It's bad, but that's not something they do out of malicious intent. But I do feel like a lot of people, like MRAs or like Republicans or white men, they do this thing where someone says my rights are being taken away, and then they try to distract from that discussion by bringing up their grievances,
Yep.
and it just derails the entire conversation. And they know what they're doing. You notice the Nico, he was really good at doing that. Um, Whenever like we would talk about like women giving pregnancy, how hard it was for women that give birth, abortion, like real stuff, it will say like, oh, what about the man who had who had the child with her, what about his feelings? And he's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, dismissing people's problems to make yourself feel like
It's
you matter.
it's basically, the thing is that like it's so frustrating because it's like the thing with men, and I feel like the issues that like a lot of us go through is that we're so starved of empathy that when we see another group of people receive it, we just bum rush their platform. And
Yeah.
it's so frustrating because instead of empowering ourselves, because here's the thing, I don't know about you guys, but I hang around a lot of feminists. I go to a lot of feminist spaces. I literally have like most of my women friends are feminists, right?
My
And my
girlfriend
whole
is a
thing,
great feminist to like,
yeah,
yeah,
but here's the thing, most women, when I talk to them about these issues, they're more than willing to listen to it. Like they
yeah,
understand because they get it. They understand, like, hey, I can't have an equitable society if men feel left behind. If men truly are hurt by this society, I want to know the ways in which they're hurt. And that's where, again, like, in my view, ideally, men's rights activists, we just pick up the slack that feminists have been fighting for because they have a lot on their plate. And
yeah,
I see the frustration of trying to tack on men's issues to that. And that's why I like, okay, men will make their own movement. The problem, I think, with that is that for a lot of us, we don't go to therapy. And I would also argue that we're not even in community with women. Like
yeah,
it's a lot. Like, here's the thing. I just think I personally am someone I've always had a good group of friends. Let me phrase that. I've always had at least one friend. There we go. There've been years where I visually remember like what it's like to not have a plans like for the third Saturday night in a row. I know what it's like to not have friends. I know what it's like to not have any sort of community or whatever. That's why I'm very
yeah,
grateful that I have that now. And it's so frustrating because I think a lot of men started off this movement with the intention of like, I guess I want to believe with the intention of like fixing some of the problems, like creating some form of community. But the problem is that like there's just so many hurt people and hurt men especially. I look at like the incel movement. It was started by a lesbian who just was
yeah,
feeling so alone in the world and was like, does anybody else relate? And it just sucked because a lot of people related. And it just became what it became now. You know what I mean? Even if the intention was good, I feel lonely. Does anybody else relate? You have stuff. I feel like that happens so much where you have people that are again emotionally honest with how they feel, but I think for a lot of men, some of us are just so traumatized by the patriarchy and can't look inwards that we just start looking outwards. And you see this a lot with like every white progressive friend that I know, they know what it's like to be close to blaming other people for their problems.
yeah,
They know what it's like to be like, oh hey guys, they're taking away your America. Is that what you? They know, they hear it. They just choose to go like, oh, I'm not looking down at my fellow man. I'm not blaming other people who are in the muck with me. You know what I mean? But some people do. Some people fall
yeah,
for that conditioning.
they
And it's
do.
so tragic because the hurt is real, but you have to realize somebody's trying to make money off of you. Somebody is trying to manipulate you. And it's so hard because a lot of people refuse to admit that they are being they don't even want to acknowledge that they're being manipulated, you know? It's kind of like what's that one saying? if you give someone to look down on, they'll empty their pockets for you or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Oh, that is a good. That's a good quote right there.
I forgot who said it, but it's a really good quote. Just give someone somebody to look down on, and they'll empty their pockets for you. And
Right.
so many men right now with these alpha male boot camps, with these like buy my, I mentioned this all the time in that Jubilee video. I'm like, dude, they're trying to get money from you. How do you not realize that? They're
Right.
trying to monetize your hatred because at this point we live in a society where rage bait can make you six figures a year.
Yeah. That's what I'm kind of worried about when the video comes out. I
Same.
feel like a lot of there were moments, I will admit, there were moments during the video where I think we did have good banter, a good productive conversation. But I think it's going to be overshadowed by you know, I'm trying to think of a particularly tenuous prompt that we had. Was it the Andrew Tate one?
The Andrew
Um,
Tate one, I don't think was that tensions because it's my whole thing is I feel like everybody after a certain point the conversation stops being fun and fulfilling and we just start attacking each other. And
yeah,
when I say we, I don't mean you or I think I'm you know
yeah,
who I'm referring to, but
right.
like the whole thing, I don't think it's that. I think the conversation was contentious just off the bat because you had just a bad faith actor on the side that I was
Yeah.
on, which I'm
I'm
gonna be
actually
honest with you. Oh, sorry, go
disappointed
on.
in my performance. I'm going to be honest. I feel like I played right into what Jubilee was trying
No,
to do.
stop, dude, stop.
Um,
Don't, dude, don't look, man. I'm personally embarrassed that I was kind of in that. I'm gonna just be honest. I was kind of embarrassed that I was in that video because I genuinely, again, maybe this is me, maybe because I'm living in ideals here, but I expected a kind of like what we're doing right now, just an authentic conversation on
yeah,
how the patriarchy hurts men, and we didn't get that. And to be honest with you, man, I would not feel bad about how you performed at all because frankly, you and the other like the person Pearl, I'm gonna just say her name, fuck it. Pearl is just someone who is just such a good bad faith debater. You can't beat her. Like, what's that one saying? Never argue with someone who is intellectually dishonest because they can bring you down to their level and beat you with experience.
all
That's
right. Evan
kind
was
of
doing actually a really good job taking her down. Evan, like, can you talk about like how you felt like debating Pearl? Because you did.
Um, I mean, so I definitely, once I saw her, I knew that at the very least, people in my sort of camp wanted to almost enact a kind of like rhetorical revenge on the things that she said and the ways in which she's like, sort of like, I guess, side side flanked a lot of feminists. Like she's been on panels before. One of the ways in which she got big is she was on a Vice panel of like feminists or like of women discussing women's
For
issues,
that.
something to the effect of that. And she had a lot of like clip gotcha moments against those people, and so I immediately knew that that's what she was going to be fishing for. And so and thankfully I try to do as much like preparation as possible, although I didn't want to like go into middle ground as like this is like an opportunity
yeah.
to
No one
debate.
does.
It's like it ended up being that way. And so I don't know, I yeah, it was it's really hard for me to look back and think about what it all looked like from a third person perspective. I'm also very
Yeah.
like skeptical of like how I came across in many moments as
Oh
well.
yeah. Oh
I'm
yeah.
like,
Same.
did I look like too
You were
much
great. You
impressive
were great. Hey,
Yeah.
you
You
were
did
hey,
amazing, bro.
honestly, I'll say both of you guys were honestly like great because I feel like you guys were holding your own, and I feel like the moderators were heavily favoring Pearl, and I
Right.
also feel like you guys had good retorts. I tried to retort Pearl, like when I asked her, like, have you ever interviewed any successful women? And she kind of actually paused because she had to think about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I feel
I'm
like
just saying, yeah,
when it comes to like Pearl, and the other person, I feel like when I came, like I think they knew what they were doing because they didn't tell us who we would be debating.
yeah,
You tried to ask. I thought we were going to be debating normal people. So
same,
I
one
had
hundred
my
percent.
whole talking points. I had everything planned out. I was going to talk about this. I was going to try to reach a compromise, like a literal middle ground with them. And as soon as I saw Pearl, I just got distracted. And my girlfriend and I were talking about this before. And she's like, try to find a middle ground with them. Don't come off too
Sure.
contentious with them. As soon as Pearl, and she knows who Pearl is. Everyone knows who Pearl is. And I
I
texted
still
her
had no,
while
I still had no
in the
idea who
studio,
she was.
and she's like, "You better fucking destroy her." And I was like, damn,
Literally, as soon as I told my friends that Pearl was there, they're like, destroy her, end her,
yeah,
do
Dude,
it now. Like,
that's
and
so
I was
insane.
like, I don't know if that's like totally smart. Whereas before, when I was like, what should my approach be? It was like, oh, a
Yeah.
mix of both. Like,
Yeah.
also,
What was the
by the way,
approach?
we have less than 1 minute in this meeting. We'll probably
Oh,
have to restart the Zoom
yeah.
again.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. We'll have to. Actually, curiosity. Evan, do you mind making the new Zoom chat since you have like thing?
Yeah, sure. Do I just okay, I think I'll know how to do that.
I could try to make it. I could make it. I'll make it then. Don't worry about it. I'll just make a new Zoom chat. All right.
okay,
Let me just. I guess we're gonna leave and then I'll make a new one right now.
Okay.
All
okay.
right. Give me a
Also,
second.
I have like 20 more minutes before I have to go, so
That's
we
fine.
could get some stuff out of that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. All right.
Yeah.
Ending it. Making a new Zoom chat right now.
And, the judges are all men, and they're like, okay, we're gonna give this woman a more lenient sentence, and the family court,
Yep.
which always perpetuates this idea that women have to be take care of children.
Yeah.
So I had everything planned, and as soon as I saw Pearl, it's like my mind went blank, and I was just focused on just like tearing her apart. And so I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are gonna be entertained. I think they're gonna put Pearl on the thumbnail. Mark my words.
Oh, 100% they will.
Yeah.
She's the biggest draw. Like I think it's the thumbnail is gonna be Pearl and Jasmine. That's it.
Yeah.
Um, what is it? No, you know it's funny because I had a similar. Okay, so my approach to this video, I was gonna be like, hey, I'm on this side, but like there should be no difference between you and I. Like my middle ground approach was like, hey, I'm on this side, but I want you to know that like I'm not here to be antagonistic to anything you guys are really saying because I
Yeah.
ultimately do believe in abolishing gender and taking on the patriarchy. My whole thing was like I knew I was gonna be different from the other men's rights activists. I already had a feeling I was gonna be it. You know what I mean? I didn't think I was gonna. Again, this is me being like again naive, but I didn't think I'd be like that different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I just figured the other men's rights activists would just be like normal people who just also knew the statistics on court, like kind of what you say, knew the statistics about court cases and like stuff like that, and they would just blame women for it when they should be blaming the system. That's who I thought was gonna be on there.
Yeah.
Um, to be honest with you, I feel like the fact that I was on that side, as much as I really didn't like being on that side, I think me being there at least offered more talking points, I guess, to like show because I wanted to show men's rights activists as I guess what it could be. You know what I mean?
Right.
I wanted to at least like bridge that gap for like because I don't know about you guys, but whenever I look into like when I was looking into like men's rights groups, I would say 4 out of 5 of them were toxic. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And with like
Especially the one
one
on Reddit.
what? There's
Especially that one
only
on Reddit.
yeah, no, most of them on Reddit are not like they're not that good. But there is like one on Reddit. I don't want to say it because I don't want to blow it up. But there are some men's groups that are actually conducive to having a conversation that doesn't revolve around blaming women. And I
Okay.
wanted to represent that side because when I look at men's rights activists, I'm always looking at like we're the normal people. Like you know what I mean? Like where the hell are the normal people, dog? Like where are these people? And I wanted to sort of like represent that but I guess I underestimated who would be on my side, I guess. And I say sides, there are no sides. Again, like no gender here, you know what I mean? Like men's rights, feminists, all the same. But for the context of that video, when I was in like that side, the whole time I was just like looking down, I was just like, oh man, this is I'm oh wow, I wow, this is not at all what I wanted it to be. This is not at all what I wanted this conversation to be at all, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of my biggest worries is that somebody who doesn't know who Pearl is going to come into that video and like eventually they'll maybe see some of the crazy things that she said, like that a woman is like too emotional to become president,
That was crazy
or
coming from
that
her.
yeah,
I
Yeah.
yeah, so
Women
she,
should
she
vote.
did reveal a lot of some of her wild positions, but if you just go into that video and you didn't know who she was, you would probably come away like thinking like, especially in the beginning, like, oh my God, the feminist side is like that's my worry is that we came off very aggressive because there was a
no, no, you
lot,
didn't.
especially after noticing the way that a lot of other middle grounds are. I'm like, some of the middle grounds are just like calm discussions, and so I
Yeah,
was like, wow, ours might come across
I
a lot more.
I want to make it clear. I don't think this is just me here.
Mm,
Maybe again, maybe because I'm dealing with like ideals here, but I think you guys, if anything, came off as just what's the word I'm looking for? Like people were talking over you guys a lot. I think
Yeah.
you guys will come off a lot better I'm hoping that I don't come off terribly. Did I come off terribly at all by chance?
No, I do
Okay.
think they're gonna be like a fringe. Like so, Jubilee does this thing, and you did it subconsciously, but they do this thing where they have two sides, and all the people on that side usually agree, and there's gonna be like one black sheep, one lone wolf that
Yeah.
kind of like stands out from the rest of the group, and people start doubting if they're actually like if they're a Jubilee plant meant to like make the other side look more decent or something.
That's a
So I
thing.
think you did amazing, but I won't be surprised if there are people in the comments saying that you're a feminist in disguise or some crazy shit like that.
Sure. Yeah, that's the kind of the thing. Like, I'm like, I already kind of know. I'm no going into this. My whole thing is because this is just my like lived experiences. But I'm someone who like, I just know that I'm not gonna fit the norm of what it is you want me to be in terms of like what a leader looks like, what like a men's like I'm sure I'm sure I fit into some very not good stereotypes just based on how I look and having like some scruff underneath my neck. Um, but like I also would just my whole thing is again with most things, I would just hope the people who are looking for the normal people are at least going like, okay, this person at least seems decent. Like why you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. There's gonna be those people who are gonna be like, get this guy. This guy doesn't represent us. Whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I don't care. Like, but like I do think there's gonna be some people who I think are gonna look at that video and look at maybe who I am and go like, this guy seems normal. Why?
right.
Why is he with them? And again, like, because I guess I'm just naive. I just figured like, hey man, like somebody. My whole thing was somebody has to be the opposition, and I was like, I'd rather it be me because I know how to at least have a conversation, and I think again, like I just think most men we're kind of at a disadvantage because a lot of us are not good at articulating our feelings. Like the running joke that me and my friends have is that like you don't come across very many straight men who are emotionally available, which is obviously a lie.
Right.
But like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where like men are just like a lot of us aren't good at articulating how we feel. And I just figured like I know there's gonna be a lot of angry dudes on my side. Let me at least be like kind of like someone who can kind of like what's that one? You know that one Key and Peele sketch, the translator guy, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
The anger
yeah,
translator. Yeah.
exactly. Like, I wanted to be the anger translator for
Yeah.
like that side because again, I think we all agree in this group. The feelings are valid. There are
Yeah.
genuine grievances that men have that I think society should talk about. Like again, the alienation, what you said about divorce cases. I honestly didn't look into those, by the way. But the divorce cases, the alienation, just things like that. There are real grievances, and I think a lot of men have every right to be angry. I just think where they're directing that anger is very detrimental to society and also their movement as a whole. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Right. And that's what a lot of what I've seen is that instead of the men's rights movement focusing on or pointing out men's issues to solve them, a lot of it's pointing out men's issues as a talking point against,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like it's like, well, men
Yes.
Culture
doing
war.
this or that. But
Yeah, culture war.
it's
Yeah,
very
exactly.
rare I see MRAs using that as a means to legitimately try to solve those issues. And that's
Yeah.
why I kind of like was like I think one of the prompts was like, is the feminist movement more important? And I was like, yes, but only in the context of which I think that I don't it's not that men's issues are less important than women's, it's just that this movement should have the broadest array of perspectives in trying to solve,
Yeah.
all issues. Whereas I think a
Yeah.
lot of the MRA movement is just like a opposition to feminists and feminism.
Yes. I think what I want to do, since I have to go soon, is end it off on like a more positive note.
Sure.
I think we can all go around and say what y'all think is y'all's best moment from the
From the
discussion. Like,
video. Good call.
where y'all think y'all did the best with? Like, starting with you,
Uh,
Ariel.
all right. Personally, my favorite part was I forgot his name, but the moderator when he just bluntly asked me, "Why are you on this side?" And I gave I thought, a really good answer about how like, hey man, the patriarchy hurts us, whether you realize it or not. Like we have the same end goal as feminists, and I'm tired of blaming women for all of our problems. And I feel like I made a really good point about how like we need to create a society that's more just empathetic for people that's just more like kind of giving. Oh, one that I know people are gonna love. I hope they put this. But when I talk about how much I dislike therapy and instead want more community or compassion, I think a
Yeah.
lot of folks are gonna resonate with that one. Just because I again, I still that's still my position as someone who's been in therapy for like 4 years. total, like I still personally am not advocating for it. I do think like because I think most men will agree that like, hey, this society doesn't care about any of us, and we grew up in villages. And I think what's that one quote? The child who doesn't feel the child who's not
Warmth of the
embraced by the
village will burn
village
it down.
down to feel its warmth. Yeah, I think a lot of men are very much so trying to burn down the village, and it sucks because all we really need is just more community and compassion. And I feel like when I pointed that out, I thought that was I hope they leave that in.
All right,
Yeah.
they better. What about
Yeah.
you, Evan?
One, I probably either one of my interactions with Pearl. Those are at least from what I remember sticking out in my mind. There was, I think, one in particular where she was saying that women are actually more violent, and I was like asking her, okay, who commits like the majority of,
Yeah.
and she refused to answer, and then went off on some tangent about like
As
a
she does.
specific violent crimes that women actually commit
Yeah.
more of. And then I circled back and I was like, so you didn't actually answer the plurality of the
She went on a whole
category of
try, didn't answer the whole question.
actions by men. And it just goes to show you like how dishonest some of her talking points are. You
Yeah.
know,
I
Yeah,
thought you
Evan did
rebuffed her very
an
well.
amazing
I
job.
thought I thought you rebuffed everything she said. I thought you were great, personally.
Yes, like Evan should be like the poster child of what it should be to debate Pearl, because
Yeah.
I feel like I fell into a lot of her traps where she would um shift to another, like pivot to another thing. She's really good at doing it, and you
right.
get distracted. So you're like, wait, what the fuck was I even talking about?
Yeah.
Um,
She
I
she she
think
she she does the thing really well. She throws a lot of information at you, and she keeps switching between statistics and anecdotal evidence, but gets
yeah,
angry at you when you talk anecdotally and you bring up statistics.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
I would say my personal favorite was um, I think Evan might have been in the conversation. It was very chill, very smooth, and we were talking about how men could foster healthy communities with one another. Because
Yeah.
instead of like looking for women to always fill that hole inside of
Yes.
us, we should be looking for male friends,
Yeah, 100%.
camaraderie with other people, companionship. And I thought
Yeah.
that was probably the most nuanced conversation. Even Nico was chill too. Like that's that's
No, I agree
that's
with
what I
that.
wish
Yeah.
the whole thing was. I it kind of got fucked up in the end because he said some crazy shit about being punched in
Yeah.
the face.
Yeah, I remember
but
that.
um, but
Everything leading up to that was
overall,
great though, because it was based on around like, oh, I think that people nobody disagreed with that. We all
yeah,
agreed like men need community and we need to foster more camaraderie. The only problem was there were some people who were like, I just like getting punched in the face. And I'm like, that you know what I
yeah.
mean?
It basically
Like,
plays into the stereotype that men just like violence to
yep.
satiate.
right.
Oh,
But if
oh,
if
dude.
that's a
Dude,
Because
I
thing,
we
was
just operate, yeah, no.
Dude, I was so angry when Pearl said like people are just naturally violent, and you were like, "I'm not naturally violent," and I'm like, "Yeah, again? I don't know who Pearl is." I was like, "Who are you?" Like, lady,
right?
what is this? Yeah,
So I think when the video comes out, we should stay in touch and like maybe talk after, so we
yeah.
could,
I was, that's the thing. I was kind of so for context. My idea with this whole video, like the reason why I have it recorded, was because I was this is my goal, right? And let me know if you guys have a better way of going about this. I was just gonna try to be the first person that commented and just comment like, "Hey guys, me, Evan, and Isaac had a really good conversation on like the nuanced take between masculinity. If you guys want to see a more nuanced take than this video, please check out our video." You know,
that's a great idea.
that's what I was gonna do, just because like man, I walked away from that video genuinely like my soul hurt being
I
a
was
part of that.
disappointed.
It
Yeah,
was disappointing, and it was also like it's one of those things like I really again maybe this is just me because ideal again with ideals here, but like I walked in with the expectation of having a really good nuanced conversation, um and yeah, it was the opposite of nuanced, and yeah, I was complete I was just I was just sandbagged, and just I honestly hated that video, and I
Speaking of that, Evan, I actually got around to seeing your Nectar video.
wait, what's the
Um,
Nectar video? What'd
Which
you do?
one? I've actually been in two. And
What'd
there's
you
really,
do?
what's the second one? I saw the one where y'all were drunk. What's the second one?
well, the first one I went on was dating by outfit, but I was like barely in that one. And then the second
Oh,
one was the drunk dating one. And then
Wait,
there
what's the
okay.
drunk dating? How did that go?
it was okay. It was kind of awkward.
It was
The,
okay.
the one that's coming out though, I think will be more interesting, and that one is swipe or swap, so it's like the swiping one. Um,
Okay.
Those are I told them though because the producer recognized me and I was like I don't want to go on any more of those. If I do go on more Jubilee, it would preferably be more substantive conversational stuff. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
That's
think
that's
what we
crazy.
should do.
like
I gotta watch your
I
neck
live
there.
in LA, so I was just like right around the corner.
Yeah, no, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, by the way, I was more than willing to drive to Culver City. Like, I mean, I just got a car, so I'm like, I finally have a car after like this whole year. I've been kind of carless, so like, I finally, I have no. Also, my friend lives near you. Actually, I have a lot of friends that live in Culver City. That I'm there pretty often.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hit me up.
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm all the way in Houston.
I
That's
know.
crazy, bro. I still can't believe you fucking. That's
I know
insane,
for
dude.
that Jubilee video too.
Yo, for
And you
that
know what's the funniest
disappointment.
thing? Basically, they said, "Oh, we're gonna send you a travel stipend," and
Did they?
then like a few like a couple weeks before I made the travel, they're like, "Oh, by the way, they're pulling our funding, so you're gonna have to buy your own ticket." And I was like, "Okay, it's not that much," but I just feel like if I'm gonna come back to Jubilee, it has to be an actual nuance, like Evan
Uh,
said, something
yeah.
that's productive, you know?
Nuanced conversation, and also I will say, dude, $50 of my time for that. Like, I'll either do it for free or I'll
Yeah,
do it for a lot of money. But I'm not
yeah,
gonna lie to you, getting paid $50 for that. I don't know if we should even say that, but I'm like, that
We can cut
is.
this part out.
Yeah, no,
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 100%, 100%. We're cutting this part. We're cutting this part. There are certain parts of this thing that I'm gonna try to cut out where I'm just like, I don't want to shit on Jubilee too hard,
Right.
yeah,
but like, yeah, no, the Jubilee has left a very bad taste in my mouth, and it sucks because I initially agree with a lot of their mission statement, and they went down the I would say the Logan Paul rabbit
yeah. So what I'm thinking before I let y'all go is
for
when the
sure.
video out in around October, we'll still be in contact, but by then I'm pretty sure
Hell yeah, no, for sure, man.
I'll meet up again on Zoom and like debrief and talk about how the video went and what we thought and stuff like that. How do y'all?
I'm
What do y'all
down.
think?
I'm
I'm
down.
I'm so down for that.
Okay, sound good.
All right then. All right then. Then yeah, I appreciate the conversation then. What is it? I'm gonna edit this probably later at some I don't know, give me like a week.